So this is Fam Electric Ghost Show. We have VYB on the air, and you guys are from Atlanta. And I have been doing a podcast where I talk to indie artists around the world for the last 2 years, and we're at 21,000 listeners worldwide right now. So,
wow.
Thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks for having us.
Great. We actually talked to Bathe or your Bailey, your bass player, on her project a couple weeks ago. So yeah, so it's great to talk. You guys are, from your description, you're an American pop band from Atlanta, Georgia. And Tom is you're the lead vocalist, and Noah is on lead guitar, Bailey's on bass, and Ryan's on drums, right?
Yeah, we got me, I'm Tom, and then we got Bailey and Noah here too. Ryan couldn't be here tonight, but 3 of us are on the line. We'll be on the line this whole interview.
Hi.
Cool. Hi. So yeah, so I've been looking at your Spotify singles, and you're working toward a 2020 album, right?
Yeah. We've been recording an album all year with Damon Moon at Standard Electric in Atlanta, and we're getting pretty close to
Standard Electric.
Yeah, Standard Electric.
You said Phantom Electric.
I didn't say Phantom Electric.
Yeah, well, that's always good. You can always plug me. I don't mind.
And it's set to release in February 2020.
Cool. So are these 3 singles that are out there, Ocean Breeze, Dancing in the Rain, and Think of You, are they going to be on that album, or are these like separate from the album?
Yeah, they're going to be on the album. They're singles building up to it. So they're going to be part of the whole collection once that comes out.
So that gives you like a feel for what the structure of the album is going to be based on these 3 tracks.
Yeah. This album kind of goes a lot of places. We try to keep it pretty radio with our singles, and the other songs on the album are going to be a little bit more experimental. They're going to dive a little bit into other places,
a little deeper.
But cool. Yeah, but all in all, this will generally be the sound of the album. Yeah.
So I always ask these questions. It's usually when I have like an individual person, I ask these questions. But since you're a group, you guys can feel, who's going to answer which ones. But when did you first get into music? And everybody can kind of talk about that. Like what age?
Yeah, I mean, we've all been doing music for at least a few years now. I started off in grade school playing saxophone, and I just worked my way up to piano and started singing, and kind of a few years ago I jumped into the whole trying to do a whole band type thing. I know you talked to Bailey a little bit a couple weeks ago about how she started, but I'll let her reiterate.
Yeah, I mean, I started basically when I was 16 as far as like creating music. Yeah, and I'm 26 now, so I'm old. And
not as old as me. I'm 51, so I got you guys beat by that.
Yeah, and I kind of started as a little kid when my uncle left one of his guitars, and I stole it from him without him knowing it when I was like 7 or 8. And then I didn't start. Yeah, and I didn't start actually writing anything until I joined in with VYB. It was always just trying to play covers and stuff like that. So it's been a whole new experience for me on that front.
Yeah, and Ryan, cool. he's not here right now, but from what I know, he started playing drums through his church, and he's been doing it for almost a decade now. So we all kind of come from different spots and how we started playing.
So how did you guys like meet? Because you're a band. Usually I don't ask that question for individuals, artists, but since you're a band, I usually do ask, like, how did you guys like link up and meet? Do you have that story?
Oh yeah, it's a story. It all started last summer. I was trying to put a band together, and I had been trying for a couple of years at the time, and it just wasn't working out with anyone. And we all met on this website called Bandmix, which it essentially is like Tinder for musicians, where like you build a profile. Yeah, it's I hadn't either. My dad actually is the one he just came across it, and he's like, "Hey, you should do this." And I was like, "What do you know, Dad?" And we all built profiles, and I found Noah, our guitar player, and shortly after I found Bailey, and then shortly after that we all found Ryan. So we all met on the same site through the same process, and it's kind of funny how it all worked out.
Did you guys have like a criteria when you were looking for people to play with? Did you like say, well, I want a certain style or certain type of music genre, or how did you do that?
Yeah, I mean, the way that Bandmix works is like you can set up a profile of what music you're into and what instruments do you play. So I looked for someone that kind of had the same tastes and styles, and obviously played what I needed. I found Noah first, and we bonded pretty quickly over our musical taste and just how we got along. And I had actually found Bailey a while back before I found anyone else, and I really liked her production style, and I liked the music she was into. And
she ghosted you.
Yeah, she ghosted me for a little bit, but we finally got her, and yeah. So we were a trio, and Bailey actually started off on drums, and
yeah, she told me that.
Yeah, we were having trouble finding a bassist, and we knew Bailey knew how to play bass, so we asked her so graciously if she'd switch, and without a doubt she did. And then I already knew Ryan had actually approached me, and I knew exactly when we needed a drummer. I was like, yeah, we need to get Ryan. So we reached out to Ryan, and literally within minutes he replied saying yes. So
that's really cool, because one of the things I was going to wonder about is like in terms of like your genres and your influences. Could you maybe describe like what would you describe your band's like primary genre, and then who are your like your biggest influences musically?
Yeah. I think this upcoming album, our singles kind of can be boxed into one style of music, or at least a couple. But our album will have a lot of different styles. I think it's hard to categorize us into one specific genre, but if we could, we call ourselves, in short, if we don't have time to explain the whole thing, we just say we're an indie rock band or an indie pop band.
Like indie, like alternative.
Yeah,
I know that. Yeah, Bathe, she had herself pegged as like a dark pop, but you don't want to peg yourself like dark pop. You want to open it up to more to indie rock because you have a wider range.
Yeah, we have a lot of different sounds and textures and instruments going on. So it all gets kind of different depending on what song you're listening to. But we all have very different tastes in music. I come from like a world of like pop, EDM, and I'll let the others explain kind of how they were brought up.
I mean, when I was 16, I first started making music. It was very like, I think punk like Paramore style. But slowly I started getting more and more pop. Like I really like Lana Del Rey and Billie Eilish, but it's still not the type of pop that Tom likes. It's I don't know. It's but yeah, definitely more of like the dream pop sort of stuff is what I'm into.
So on the EDM, what artists would you mention on the EDM, just so people maybe know?
When I first started getting into EDM, I actually got into it a little bit in high school when I heard Deadmau5, and I was really big on that style, like that house music, like Deadmau5, Tiesto, and those kind of artists. And then as I got older, I started listening to a lot of the Chainsmokers when they were in their prime. Listened to Zedd for a while, and I started getting into those more pop friendly artists, like those radio friendly artists that you hear on the radio all the time, not necessarily the house music anymore. And that's kind of where the pop realm of that style got integrated into my songwriting.
So you started moving toward more like writing actual songs, because EDM is kind of like, it's like dance music that doesn't actually sometimes have song structure. So you were looking more toward like a pop artist that have song structure, that actually you have, not just a dance hit or an EDM or a trance, but something that actually has, like melody, structure, hook, all that.
Yeah, that was the kind of transition that I was making, especially when I started songwriting. I was listening to things with more structure and like you said, like just kind of more structure. Yeah.
So as a keyboard player, what kind of setup do you have? Are you like using soft synths with MIDI controllers or hardware synths?
Oh no, I don't have the money to buy hardware synths. No, I started off a few years ago. I started off with I just started experimenting on GarageBand when I decided I wanted to write music, and I really didn't know what I was doing because that's when I was starting to learn piano too. Then as I learned GarageBand more, I got familiar with piano because if you know piano, you can play it basically any instrument on a MIDI controller. So yeah, I learned piano and I started experimenting with a lot of different sounds and learning how to program drums and all that stuff. And but yeah, no hardware synths for me. I'd love to have them if we ever get big one day and have money for that in the budget.
Yeah,
I'll definitely go crazy.
I'm a big keyboard guy. Like I got Modes and Rolands, but I got the age of over time I bought them.
Yeah.
I came up like in the new wave era. So like Roland Jupiter 8s and Juno 60s, 106s, mini Modes, Prophet 5s, that kind of thing. So I don't use DAWs in my workflow. I do all hardware going into digital recorders, but that's just a choice I made just because it came up that way. And I bought the synths just because they have a character to them.
Yeah, keep it. It's old school. It's cool.
Yeah, but it's cool because like a lot of artists today, and I've talked to DJs and hip hop artists, they don't have them either. But there's a resurgence in the hardware, so it's kind of cool if you get to it. But yeah, everybody does their art a different way, and the MIDI controllers can do everything that I do to a certain extent. But yeah, it's interesting. So when you go to a studio, do you use like the studio gear, or do you just still use your MIDI controllers?
It's a healthy blend of both. The way we handle it with Damon is, usually we'll have a pretty clear cut demo for him when we enter the studio. Because we'll usually in the cases we spent months working on this song, learning how to play it, adding little bits and pieces here and there. So when we finally bring the demo to him, we have a lot of stems. We have like a lot of different parts. For those of you listening who don't know what stems are, but like we have a lot of like tracks already recorded through the MIDI process.
For the digital audio workstation, you've got all your MIDI tracks, all your stems, right?
Yeah. So anything that's like synthetically processed that we don't necessarily need to record, we'll just bounce it over to him, and he'll use that exact file in his Pro Tools session. But the way Dame works is he's such a genius, and he's always thinking of melodies that we never would. So there's a healthy blend of our stuff, of our synthetic synths, and there's a lot of his hardware in there too.
Oh yeah, because the MIDI controls, he could bring it into a Prophet, he could bring it into a D50 or a Yamaha DX7 or whatever he happens to have. Yeah, because of that, MIDI is the genius of Dave Smith from Prophet and from the founder of Roland. They came up with MIDI back in the day. Those two guys, the head of Roland and Dave Smith, they actually designed MIDI, which was before MIDI. You couldn't do that. Every instrument had its own connection, had its own like proprietary connection. I kind of came up in that time.
Yeah.
MIDI was a big revelation because then you could, a chord can talk to a Roland can talk to a Yamaha, you can talk to a Moog. It was kind of a big deal at the time.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting to look back at how everything came about and think about how easy everything is now.
Yeah, that was a big challenge back in the day, that you couldn't really talk to each other. You just put it into a mixer and record it like hardware, record it into a Tascam or into a reel-to-reel. And you had to play it.
Yeah, but yeah, no, I love experimenting with sounds like that. And like I said, like that's just kind of that's how the people I listened to did it, and it greatly affected how I want to like make music and create and stuff. So I love experimenting with synths and all that stuff. But Noah, who we got here, he plays guitar, and like his process of writing is extremely different than mine and what he was into when we got into this. So I'm gonna let him explain that a little bit.
Yeah. So as a guitar player, do you bring like demos, like audio demos of your guitar to the session?
Oh yeah, you cut out for a little there.
Well, what I'm asking is like, as a guitar player, do you like record songs like on tape or like on digital tape and then bring them to a session, or do you work out your ideas as a full band?
Well, we kind of do a blend of that. So a lot of times what we'll be doing is we'll be down in the basement of our house, just trying to come up with jams and stuff like that and working it out as we go. And as we get things finalized and stuff, we've got, the tools I've got a mic amp and stuff, or an amp mic that'll plug into our laptops and stuff, and we can record and track along with the MIDI tracks that Tom makes and stuff like that. And then we'll take those to the studio and use them as scratch tracks when we record the real thing with his professional mics. But always using my beautiful Fender Blues Deluxe amp, though. I love that thing. It's my baby. So
yeah, that's cool. So you can actually capture that into like a digital recorder, like Pro Tools or any of the Logic or whatever you use.
Yeah, I rarely ever use the simulated amps or the simulated pedals and stuff like that. It's usually always using my raw equipment, just ran straight in through a microphone.
Yeah, that's like me and my Moog. I kind of have to do it that way myself. But there's something about like acoustic instruments that like when you're like a bass player or a drummer or a guitar player, that's kind of like this age you can go into a workstation and you can simulate like everything. But It's cool to actually have people who actually play. I've actually talked to a lot of producers that actually don't play any physical instruments.
Yeah.
But it's cool to actually talk to bands that actually have members that actually still play keyboards or basses or drums or guitars.
Yeah,
because this age is kind of like this is a brand new age where the DJ and the hip hop artists, they don't do that a lot.
Yeah, I mean, when we go into the studio, we all, for the most part, record everything raw using our instruments in our hands and with our live equipment and stuff like that. Like I'll bring 2 or 3 of my guitars from home so I can get the different tones out of the different guitars for different parts, run through my amp. Ryan will bring his own cymbals from home and stuff like that, and we'll use a drum set that Damon's got inside his studio that's all mic'd up. And then Bailey will play her live bass and stuff like that, sometimes through direct DI and sometimes through pedals and through a bass amp. So everything we do is always done with our hands. It's very rare that we do any fake instrumentation.
Yeah, it's interesting because when you guys go to play, have you found that because this is the age of like hip hop and DJs and producers that just bring a laptop and a Pioneer CDJ or something, do you find it that those type of artists are kind of taking over the scenes, or are you still finding places that want like live bands?
I think we have a fairly easy time finding venues and stuff in Atlanta that want the real live music and stuff like that. We play a lot of regular shows at Smith's Old Bar, but we also play at like 529 and the Vinyl and places like that. And it's I don't feel like we're really
okay.
What's
cool.
that?
You're still playing places that want to have live bands that just don't want to have that. Yeah. You're in a scene that still has that. Like if you go to New York and Boston, you can always find like where I am, like I'm in the Northeast, and there's still a lot of like CBGB type clubs, around that want to see like real bands.
Yeah. Wait, sorry. Say that one more time.
What I was saying, like in New York City, is clubs like CBGBs, like where the Talking Heads played. It was it's a famous club in New York City. Like indie bands played. Talking Heads played there. Like a lot of the Ramones played there. So those clubs are still around. So there's still clubs that want to see that type of art. But then there's a lot of hip hop and EDM clubs that don't actually bring like live bands in.
Yeah, I mean, they're definitely they're two completely different parts of the industry, but I think there are spots that do a good job of blending it. Like we've been looking into play at a venue called Aisle 5 down here in Atlanta, and that's a really good example of a venue that does live bands and also DJ shows. It's just kind of fit for both of them.
Oh, cool! And, they have integration. That's good.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen gigs where one of the bands, one of the bands on the bill is a band, and then the next person is a DJ, and like it's a pretty seamless transition. So yeah, I think they're both very different, but they have a lot of similarities and they can work together. I think our style of music can kind of fit into that genre too, just with all the electronic influences that go into some of our songs.
Yeah. So when you play live, do you have your do you run like sequences off of like an Ableton Live, or you just play it live?
Yeah, actually, our show is more so now than when we started, but it's extremely choreographed now with backing tracks, and we have a bunch of lights that run through a Logic session, and they match the music that's playing and stuff like that. That's all controlled by Noah and Ryan. Ryan's got a
so you're getting pretty professional there.
Yeah, no, it definitely took some getting used to trying to everything is on a clock now. We can't just decide exactly when to play, exactly when to stop. But it gives a lot of order to our show, and it gives a lot of like a lot of pizzazz to our show. It becomes more of a performance instead of just music. And
do you feel a little locked in when you're doing that, or do you feel like you can still improvise a little bit?
We can definitely improvise a little bit. Noah has complete control over when to stop and start the music.
Okay.
So just by the click of a button, he says, we need to say something right here that we didn't plan for. He can just stop the track and it'll stop moving, and we can talk for as long as we want. We can say whatever we want. We can play a song in between if we wanted. And then he can press another button and the light show will resume, or the next song that we intended to play will go on. So even though it's very like choreographed and down to a tick, we still have a lot of control over it, and it's very it's just it's nice. It's it puts us at ease.
So it lets you play your track closer to like what you recorded.
Yeah, it definitely sounds a lot more studio when we can have like we have a lot of ambience in the back of our tracks, just kind of sitting there. Not a lot of people would generally notice it just because they're not very melodic, but they add a lot of texture and presence to the song.
The tracks, not the people.
Did I say?
Oh, I thought it sounded like you're saying people weren't melodic.
No. The tracks.
I heard what you're saying. You're saying you got like backing tracks with like a lot of ambience, so you got like.
But yeah, like people don't generally notice it just because there's not a whole lot going on with the synthesizers and the ambient tracks. But if you would take them away, then it would sound a little naked. So
it'd be a little more sparse.
Yeah,
some people like that kind of like dead electronic sparseness, like Prince Dirty Mind or something's real sparse.
Yeah,
but yeah, that can leave you a little open. You gotta, when you have it kind of a lot of open space, then it makes it kind of dangerous sometimes, because then you don't have that like there. So it's harder to do it.
Yeah,
so
our live music sounds pretty full because of the backing track, and we definitely like that. And we definitely we set out to do that pretty early on with our performances.
It kind of hits the audience, right? I mean, it gives them something where you're hitting them with like a lot of sound, like the kind of Phil Spector wall of sound kind of idea.
Yeah, it's a lot of sound. There's a lot of different moving parts going on at points in the backing track that we wouldn't be able to replicate live. So the backing track definitely helps us. The backing track also helps keep our light show in time with us. Ryan.
Okay, so you have it all queued to your backing tracks then.
Yeah, cool. We have the lights, we have our backing tracks. Everything is in a single Logic session that Ryan has a click going to his ears for. And if Ryan gets off time, then the whole thing's off time. But we've got it down to a science, and it's pretty rock solid now.
That's awesome, because yeah, I mean, I've talked to other bands. DJs can link like that too. Like a lot of hip hop guys can run that because they use like main stage, or they do Logic or whatever. They have that linkage where they can have it all tight. And then you have different bands that are more like jazz oriented or something, where they're just kind of run like a jam band, like an Allman Brothers type of band.
Yeah,
they're not going to go that way. But yeah, I understand. Like what the people want today. A lot of kids want to hear something that is similar to what they bought or what they heard on the record. And so when you play, it gives you a presentation, like you're saying. It gives you stability, it gives you structure. So that's cool.
Yeah, we definitely are down with it. We're definitely very happy with how our performance is coming and how far it's come already and where it'll go. So
now, do you have like some live gigs that you can tell the people listening to the podcast that are coming up?
Yeah, we're playing a show at the Vinyl on the 27th. We're playing with a few bands actually. This is the first show that we'll be opening for. We'll actually not be headlining for it. It's a Halloween costume party. Where the headliner is a band called the Two Takes. They're really popular locally. They're really great. So if you can make it, you should definitely come out to that. That'll be probably one of our funnest shows, just because it's going to be so festive, and there's going to be 4 different amazing bands playing there. So we're pretty pumped for that.
That's pretty cool. So are you planning on joining any kind of like festival type tours going into 2020 to support your album?
We're definitely looking into it. We've applied to a few and are waiting to hear back from it. The festival business is a little harder to break into than the local music scene, but we think once our album's out and we kind of have that to fall back on and that to add to our repertoire, we think we'll be more of a band for the, to try at least get in the running for it.
Yeah, I think because what you're doing with your shows, like the tightness of your light show and your backing track process, that would lend you to like be able to get onto a festival pretty, I think they would like dig what you're doing because you're running in a professional manner, so it would probably fit.
Yeah,
the structure of a festival,
We like to think so too. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds cool. So, have you thought about collaborating with musicians? Like you're saying that your genre, you kind of cross genre. You don't want to be pigeonholed, so you're like. So, are you up for like collaborating with like a hip hop artist or a jazz artist or a rap artist or any like country or?
We've definitely talked about collaborating with people before. We've met people that we bond musically over with. I think our music is a lot of genres, but I think if there's 2 genres that it's not at all, would be rap and country.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not a style that resonates with any of us.
Yeah.
And we have nothing against it, but we just think if we're going to collaborate, we want it to be someone that we connect musically on a really deep level with. So
more like maybe a DJ or like a harder rock band or something.
Yeah, like rock bands, even some softer indie acts. We've seen some people that we thought it'd be interesting to work with, but definitely stuff that's more in our realm. Obviously, it's fun to experiment with genres that you're not super involved in, and we're definitely open to that. But I think the best thing would be to work with someone that we can really connect with right off the bat.
That's interesting. Yeah. Well, it's cool because you already cross genre anyway, but it's cool to know where you want to go and where your boundaries are. But so what are your thoughts on the future of music, where there's a lot of producers out here today that actually don't play instruments, and you guys are a band that's like still rooted in the kind of old school of actually playing musical instruments. What do you think? Do you think the trend is going back to bands like yourself, or do you see more of the producer type of thing going on?
I think right now, at least on the radio charts and stuff, it's just completely dominated by producers and in that style of creation, that very synthetic style. Beats are prominent, and beats are exactly what people want at the moment, at least commercially. I hear a lot of people complain and say like music has lost its soul and stuff like that because of the electronic that's been added so heavily into everything. But I think there's a lot of great music out there, and people, if you just listen to the radio, you're obviously not going to hear it, but it's really not that hard to find some amazing bands. Even the technology we have today is one of the reasons why it makes it so easy to find awesome music. And that's kind of why music is it's just not the way it was even back 20 years ago, where you'd have these 10 elite bands that dominated everything. No one could even compete with them because the platform wasn't there for the smaller artists to get heard.
There was a studio gate. Like, you can't record if you can't get to Atlantic, or you can't get to Columbia, or you can't get to RCA. You can't get in the door. You can't even get your album out the door.
Yeah.
So that kind of thing is gone now. And then the price we pay sometimes might be like the producers that keep on producing the same style. kind of like when I grew up, disco kind of blew itself out because you had the same guys running the same beats over and over, and it burned itself out. And then you kind of had this punk rebirth with the Clash and the Sex Pistols that kind of opened that up. And then new wave came back and kind of, oh, disco's back as new wave. And then the punk grunge came. So I've seen these different phases where like grunge is gone, but you could feel that could come back because people, I think with this electronic age right now, I think we're probably going to get at some point another kind of punk grunge kind of indie, really hardcore stuff come back because people want that. So it's kind of like I see like a cycle in music where things kind of go and then they come back.
Yeah, I think the industry is kind of getting to that point. I think like that pop EDM style, and especially now more than ever, hip hop and rap is just dominating what's mainstream and what's popular, and that's been going on for the better part of the 2010s. So I think within the next few years we'll start seeing a change. I don't know what it will be, but like you said, that's
I
think the nature of the industry is it'll change.
Well, I've been really into like modular Euro rack synthesis, and if you check out what's going on in Berlin and in London, and in South Korea and Japan, there's a lot of people because of the resurgence of like Moog and Prophet and the Euro rack companies making these like the original electronic music isn't what these DJs are doing. Original electronic music was people like Moog 55s, like Keith Emerson, or guys from Yes, or the guys from Genesis, using like Prophets and Hammond organs and modular synths. And people have kind of forgotten that electronic music doesn't have to be cold. It can be like classical or jazz or really experimental. And I think so sometimes I think that kind of stuff is a kind of genre I'm in. And I see that there's a lot of really cool equipment that's out and it's selling really well. And there's a lot of artists using it. So I think the future of electronic music is going to be more jazz and classical and kind of old school, going back to Yes and progressive rockers and stuff. That's what I see a lot going on, in at least the areas I work in.
Yeah, I mean, I think I definitely agree with you. And I think that you can already see certain bands kind of starting to pop in the mainstream that you didn't think would ever come, would ever be popular even just a few years ago. I think natural instruments and a lot like guitar driven music is starting to make its way back a little bit more. I think we'll see more of that as the years go on.
Yeah, I think there's kind of a little rebellion against like just running your CDJ and hopping up and down. I mean, because not that that's not fun, but I think people want to see the dynamicism that you saw with like, I would go see the Allman Brothers. I would see Greg Allman playing his Hammond B3. I would go see like the Who, or I'd see a band like Husker Du or the Replacements, like really, or REM back in the day. Yeah, I saw them when they're like coming up, and that was very exciting to see people that were playing this indie rock, and they had this kind of punk aesthetic, and it felt like these were singer-songwriters that had a voice. And that's another question I always like to ask is, as a singer-songwriter, you guys are expressing yourselves, and you're not doing covers. There's a lot of bands that are just cover bands. So when did you guys feel that like you had something to say, you had a unique voice, and you wanted to kind of put it out there?
As far as like we all have a key part in the songwriting process. We all write our own parts for the most part. Sometimes one of us will step in and be like, "Hey, I like what you're doing, but I thought of this," and but for the most part, we all write our own parts and we all help each other write their parts. So musically, we're all 25% writing everything, producing everything together, making sure that we're all down with how it's sounding. But lyrically, as far as like a message goes, I handle almost all the lyrics, and basically, I mean, if you want to just if you want a short answer, it's just kind of me being dramatic about my emotions. but
yeah. So a lot of your songs come from your own personal experience, or you try to put yourself into like an author telling a story about maybe somebody else.
I actively try to avoid that. I have nothing against that style of writing, but it doesn't really resonate with me if I'm not singing about something that I've gone through.
Okay, so it's more like you're a singer-songwriter that's relating your personal experiences through your songs.
Yeah.
Not like a Bruce Springsteen telling the everyman story, or Bob Dylan telling like some story about some character.
Yeah, no, my songs definitely are directly correlated to me, and there's a couple instances where they're not exactly about me, but it's still a personal experience, and they're about, maybe someone I love, or some, one of my friends, or something like that, where it's still connected to what I've going through and what I'm seeing of a situation or something like that.
Well, I think that's interesting because when you're a singer-songwriter, if you feel comfortable about like your subject matter, and you as a songwriter, you relate to your audience because you feel confident about telling that story, or you found a way to use that voice, and then people resonate with it, because everybody who reads a poem or gets a song, they interpret it, and they can find something in your experience that's like universal. And I think songwriters, what the key is they take something that's personal and they kind of make it universal.
Yeah.
In some way. So you would agree with that?
Oh yeah, for sure. I definitely agree with.
Yeah, so I think that's the key, because some people say, "Oh, well, how can you just write about yourself?" But if you're a songwriter, you can check out some of the great songwriters. Yeah, I mean, if you're a songwriter, if you go back to like Carole King or Neil Diamond or the great songwriters back in the day, they took personal experiences and made it universal. They took something that was maybe painful, or they make it so everybody feels, pain, or they feel emotion. And if you tell a story in such a way through your song, people connect to it like reading a novel.
Yeah, no, it's definitely like, it comes from a point of view of me. At least a lot of the songs on this album are like extremely personal, and a lot of them are about me and my relationships with people, or whether it be a girl or a friend or something. I don't always. I just kind of write what I'm feeling. So like maybe one of the songs on our next album will have something else to say, but this song is very much driven by how I'm feeling, and it's definitely kind of a story of the past couple of years of my life, because I just get inspired to write songs as I'm experiencing life and living through situations. So
yeah, I think every songwriter, if you look at the periods of like great songwriters, they go through periods where they're very confessional, telling a story, like Dylan's like Tangled Up in Blue, or Idiot, when back in the day they were telling a story like his relationship with his wife broke up, so the whole album was about that, and it was very personal, but then he kind of made it universal. Springsteen would tell the story like an everyman, or the kind of everyday people, working people, but make it such like it's very operatic, even though it's about a common blue collar person. He could turn it into like Shakespeare.
yeah.
So there's different things you can do at different levels, and there's also like Springsteen would have a piece of himself in those characters, even though they were like some other character, and you give them a name, actually were rooted in his personal experience. But then he kind of made them removed from himself by giving them names and stuff. But
yeah, that's definitely a plus side to doing that. When it's a little too like when you don't want to be as vulnerable, it's very easy to just kind of pass whatever you're feeling off to a fake character or something. It makes it a lot easier to write about it if you know that, like, okay, yeah, I can detach myself from what I'm writing about.
But some songwriters, like Carole King, she was talking about herself a lot. It resonated. On Tapestry, that whole album is about her personal experiences as a woman in the '70s, kind of becoming independent, and that album resonates because it's so truthful. And so, because I think people really key in on a singer songwriter when they feel like they're telling the truth, or they're telling their like a real emotion. So I think they could connect with that. I mean, it leaves you vulnerable, and you have to handle that, because then your fans like are getting really into like your personal business, and you have to be able to kind of separate that? Is like, what is me and who am I on stage versus like who I am in real life? And have you ever had any issues with like fans like crossing the line? Like some bands, are not big enough to run into crazy fans yet, but you never know. At different levels, have you ever had trouble with fans?
No, we haven't had any trouble with fans. We've definitely had people like we don't want at our shows for like, for various reasons. But like we've never been faced with like a on the spot situation where someone is, doing weird shit or whatever.
Yeah,
but
like a stalker stalking, like the bigger acts, they run into that sometimes, like just because people start thinking they know you.
Oh yeah. I mean, it honestly, like at this point right now, when people approach us, we think it's really cool, and we're happy to like answer questions or
well, you're in a positive place.
Yeah.
Because some people have run into that in different situations. I've actually talked to some artists where people kind of thought they could, they knew them from their characters because maybe they had a character that was like very, like some people create characters that are like, Bowie created all these characters, Prince created characters, and people think that maybe they're overstretched or kind of crazy, or they have these weird images, and then people think that's the person. And if you get like a Bowie or a Prince, they were kind of projecting something that's beyond like normal. And then people think that that's who they are. And
no, it's definitely like a vehicle. Like, I mean, there's a lot of songs, like even songs that I've written that like, you don't necessarily, it's a vehicle in the way that like you can write about something and be over dramatic about it and not, and not have to worry. That's one of the nice things about songwriting is like it's a song. So like you can sing a little harsher about your feelings than what is.
You can become like your stage persona, like Robert Plant's stage persona, or Roger Daltrey, or any of the great like Mick Jagger. Like he projects this image, but like real life is not exactly that person. You know? But he could be talking about all these dark things, all these crazy things. You're like, wow. And then, it's a vehicle. You're like an actor. I always talk to artists, and a lot of musicians will do a little stagecraft that requires some theatrics. So have you guys like thought about like theatrical aspects of your shows, or you just kind of do it as like straight musicians?
Our style is very, very raw. I think, and I have no problem with musicians doing it or anything, but I think what works for us is just being ourselves. And like I'll always, as far as I can see in the future, I'm going to keep continuing to write about myself. I'm going to keep continuing to write about us, and we'll all continue to write about us and our, just who we are and stuff like that. I don't think we'll ever try and assume a personality that's not us and try to be anything besides us. So that's working for us right now, is just being personally who we are and being genuine to our natural regular selves, and it's working so far. So I think we're going to keep doing that, and that's what's been feeling right.
That's going like an authentic self type of band. There's this alternative telling a story, like indie rock. Not projecting like a Ziggy Stardust or like a Freddie Mercury who was like beyond like who he really was. He was just like this stage persona. So yeah, I mean, some of the rockers back in the day, even today, they're still projecting that. Aerosmith and everything. You got to do these big bands, hyper bands that project this image that's not necessarily them. And that was kind of old school, or maybe it depends. Even like a Lady Gaga, she projects a like totally different image to who she really is.
I think Tom is very like authentic when he comes to his lyrics, and coming from someone that's not Tom, that knows Tom, like that sounded really stupid after I said it.
Yeah,
but someone that's not in Tom's brain, he doesn't sound like a crazy person. He doesn't sound like this theatrical superhero or anything that's not just completely
more like
it's
a real,
very, very
like
normal, and his feelings are universal and relatable. And like I think I admire that about Tom's lyrics, is like, yeah, it's coming from a very personal place, but it's also very relatable, and it's definitely not a like a theatrical thing at all. It's very real, and coming from someone that knows Tom,
I think
it's like real
that's
Tom.
honesty. Yeah, that's interesting because like if you get into the hip hop world, everybody projects like this super kind of image, and this is kind of like the standard music today where everybody has these like almost like a superhero in a Marvel movie or something. They're not like beyond
the larger than life persona,
totally larger than life. They're like so you look at it and it is kind of like it equates to like a Freddie Mercury or what the rock bands were doing. They have this image.
Yeah, no, I mean we're definitely just like we're just normal people, and like music is for a lot of people. Like part of the reason we do it is we're looking for a release too. So like, it's not it's all obviously it's about putting on the best show you can, but like a lot of it is just it's us having a great time. So like we're not doing it for anyone but ourselves, and we're happy to do it for everyone else, but the second that it becomes not for us, I think we'll stop enjoying it. So we got to keep being genuine to who we are and how we feel.
Well, that's authentic, like honest, like music. A musician playing kind of like a folk musician, they or an Americana musician that plays like the band. I think band was one of my favorite bands. They never had any kind of image. Robbie Robertson and the band, they were just great musicians, and they told stories, and they didn't have a lot of stagecraft. They just went on stage and they played amazingly. And I think that that kind of authentic nature of like, okay, I'm a musician, I'm a band, I'm gonna play and I'm gonna tell my story, but I don't have to have all this overhead, because that's the song is the story.
Yeah, we definitely try to keep that vibe, and like obviously like our performance is choreographed and stuff, and we got a bunch of lights and a bunch of backing tracks, but those amplify us, and they don't hide us. They make us
it's not like the other you. Yeah, it's not the other you. It just enhances the you that you're presenting. It's not creating like a different image of who you are.
Yeah,
it's just enhancing what you already have.
Exactly.
Which is cool. That's an authentic nature. I think a lot of people are looking for that today. I think that music is kind of spinning back to where you guys are going. Because I find, all the people I talk to, I find on like Instagram or Facebook or SoundCloud or YouTube, not like the top 50 or the top 100. Because that's where I think, like you said, where the music is really happening. And I've talked to like over 30 artists in the last 2 years, and they're all like indie artists in these zones. And they're creating really authentic, original music. And I think that's why I do the show, because I think people who are doing this type of work, like yourselves, need to have their story told. And so I like to be able to give you a venue for that.
Yeah, we appreciate it. It's been fun.
Yeah, so it's like you're saying this album comes out in February?
Yeah, our debut album, it's called Mood Swings. It right now it's set to release on Valentine's Day. We're still working to finish it and tie up all the loose ends and stuff like that. And we'll spend the remainder of the year doing it. But at the moment, February 14th is looking like it's going to be the release date.
Is it all going to be like streaming and download, or are you going to have physical copies at all?
It depends how big we are at that point. We've come a long way just in these past 4 months, and the album is a good 5 months away. So we could very much be well on our way much further than we even are right now. So I think the physical copy thing definitely depends on as long as we just keep growing, that'll probably happen. But it'll for sure be on all major music platforms: iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, all that stuff.
I always ask bands like would they make their album available as vinyl, because it's been like a big trend now with a lot of like indie bands that if they do have a good bass, that at least when they show up at their physical shows, sometimes they bring cassettes or vinyl, just because it seems like that seems to work on a micro level. Like if you have a small run of vinyl that your real hardcore fans will buy it.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely have like our fan base locally is extremely dedicated. So I think even if it's just a one-time order for the vinyl, we'll probably do a vinyl copy, and like I think even we would like to have a copy of our album on vinyl. I think that'd be really cool. So like
back in the day, like every album I ever bought was like, when I was 17, I bought Purple Rain on vinyl. And I ran down and got it. And it's just the experience of vinyl was just, as a music fan, I think some of the kids today are starting to realize that it's just a more complete experience, because you get to see the artwork of the band, and then they had lyric sheets. And if you take advantage of the format, it kind of really pulls your fans into your vision, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, the tangible things that you can buy and you can actually hold with your hands. It's definitely cool. It's definitely a plus, and we're definitely going to do it if it warrants it. So yeah.
I mean, the part of the technology is that you don't have to do that, but I think your fans, like, eventually, if you get a lot of fans, and they kind of like to have that piece, that physical thing to hold. So it's cool if you can go that way, but it's all economics. It's all based on what you can do and what you can't do. But yeah, your album will be available worldwide, which gives you a reach that back in the 70s, you didn't necessarily have that unless you had a big label.
Yeah, and our, like, right now Ocean Breeze is blowing up on Spotify, and like we've been getting streams in other countries and stuff like that. So it's cool to see all that coming together. Like places we've never even thought about going to are listening to our music. So it's a really cool feeling to know that just, people are all around the world are listening to our stuff.
Yeah, as part of what, like, this Anchor FM, we're actually part of Spotify. And, as a podcaster, I've seen, my fan base grow. Like, I talk to bands in the Netherlands. I talk to bands in Germany and Japan and South Africa. I'm talking to a band in South Africa in a couple of weeks. So it's like the reach of my podcast and my fan base on my podcast. I'm a musician, but I mean, my podcast probably does a little bit better than my music. But you do what you can. As an artist, you take advantage of where things are going. And it's just interesting in this age. I've been able to talk to so many musicians, and as a musician myself, I think that's valuable. So it's pretty cool to be able to talk to you guys. And when your album comes out, we always like to have artists come back on the show. And we've had artists actually do like premiere shows where they actually talk about like every track on their album. We did that with Kendrick Black and Sex with Roller Coasters. So if you guys are into that, we could schedule a show when your album comes out to do like a release party show.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. We're super pumped. We're super grateful that you had us on this podcast, and we had a great time talking to you. It's been really nice. We're definitely down to come back and especially talk about the track list when it's all out and heard.
Yeah, that'd be great. So we'll get in touch with you when you guys are close to doing that, and when it works for you guys. Let us know, and we'll put that on the schedule.
Yeah, sounds awesome. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for being on. VYB from Atlanta, Georgia. You guys, everybody who listens to this podcast, go and check out VYB. They're blowing up on Spotify. Listen to everything they're doing. Download and tell your friends. If you dig the song, tell your friends. Because that's how you move things around now.
Yeah. Also, follow our social medias. Our handle all around the board: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all that is just at VYB Band. At VYB Band.
Yeah, VYB Band everywhere. So like if you go to Facebook, everywhere you are.
Universal,
like that too?
The Universal at VYB Band, and then
cool. Thank you.
You'll be able to keep up with all of our adventures. So
we'll put some of those hyperlinks on their podcast when we send them out.
Sounds good. Thanks. We appreciate it. It's been fun.
Okay, thank you.
Bye.
Have a good one.